Okay. Maria Diploudis, how the hell are you?
Oh, that is a complicated question. I guess the short answer is okay.
Yeah.
But it's been a year. It's been an interesting few years, and this year, at least everyone else is having an interesting year too.
Yeah, one of like a lot of times when you catch up with your old buddies, especially like people friends that you have in the entertainment, um, a lot of times you might run into where like they've had a great run since you last saw them, or you've had a great run since you last saw them, and we're not really on parallel planes at the moment, so it could get kind of awkward of like, yeah, everything sucks for me right now, but everything's great for you, right? But right now, everyone's kind of like, eh.
Yeah,
Yeah,
not just me anymore.
yeah, yeah, we're all in it. I
Yeah.
I was I like actually like I looked up your name. I saw that you're Greek, and I was doing my best to, because I think it's important to try to pronounce people's names the way they were meant to be said. But I have this thing in me that I just automatically make it like a Mexican name.
Oh,
So
say it that way.
uh,
I mean, like Spanish is way more similar to Greek
it
than
it is
English.
right, the
Yeah.
Plautus, right? Yeah,
How would you say it like the Mexican version?
Maria Diploudis. I would have
It's
I
pretty
would have I
close.
would have put like a silent R at the end.
Yeah.
Diploudis. Yeah, that's what I would have done. But
In Greek it's Maria Diploudi.
oh, that's beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's Maria, not Marie, or not Marie,
Right. Yeah, it's
or not
Maria.
Mary. Yeah, it's
Not
Maria.
Mary. That's a very like Anglo-centric, but once you go to like Southern or Eastern Europe, there's a lot of Marias. Like half the Greek girls are named Maria.
Really.
Yeah,
I
most common
know
name.
I know nothing about the Greek culture, and like the only thing I know about Greek food is like there's a great Greek lunch spot in downtown Sacramento.
Yeah.
There's like a Greek buffet, and it's so good. I hope it's still there afterwards. It's great. Maybe next time you're in town, we'll hit it up.
Oh,
But
I would love to.
but
Whenever buffets are a thing again.
right, it might not be. Yeah, we might never go.
But I'm sure they'll have regular food. I'd love to check it out.
Yeah. So the only thing I know about the Greek culture is
Mhm.
that Telly Savalas and my big fat Greek wedding, which I love all of them. I love all three of those things. So how Greek are
Yeah.
you? Are you first generation American, second generation? How?
I'm first gen. I have dual citizenship. I grew up between both countries. So I'm pretty Greek. I
That's
don't
very
look it, but I am.
that's very Greek. So you were born in, I was gonna say Greek. so you so you were born in Greece, and when did you come to America? And did you land in the Bay Area when you came to America?
So I was born in America, but for the first 5 years of my life, it was half Greece, half here. And I use the term first gen because I've actually like I've looked into it, and I'm not it, like first gen can mean like when you are born somewhere else and move here, or when your
Oh,
parents like just moved here and like had you right away. So that's why I use that term, because in my mind like the second generation are the ones who like whose parents also grew up here, and it's a totally different experience growing up as a kid when you're trying to just figure everything out with your parents versus when you have parents who've kind of already figured things out. So
true.
I was born in the Bay Area. I was born in San Jose, and then the first 5 years of my life was half in the Bay Area and half in a little village on an island in Greece. We lived in this house like without running water. It was like so old world. Like my cousins would fish and we would eat like the fish and the octopus and like grill it out in the yard, and it's just a very different world between the two countries. But I didn't learn English until I started school in America when I was about 5.
And why was it half the year Greece and half the year America? Was it that your parents that's what their work was, or were they seasonal laborers, or what? Why was it that way?
So, with a lot of Greek Americans, we feel very like we're Greek first, like that's our ethnic identity, and then our nationality is like, you know, we live in America. Um, and a big part of our culture is trying to go back to Greece as much as possible. And on top of that, like all of my extended family is in Greece pretty much. I have like some cousins spread out through America, but I have like 30 cousins in Greece, you know?
Right.
So most Greeks try to go in the summer, at least for a little bit. My dad had started his own business. He was a bird salesman. So he was a bird distributor, which means like he was able to make his own schedule. And so when we were in America, it was usually during more of like the fall and winter months, and we would travel like up and down California selling birds to pet stores. So I grew up with that. I grew up with birds, and from a young age I learned how to like train and interact with birds, and I can still do it to this day if it ever
Wait, so were you guys
comes
like
up.
in a big cargo van with like boxes and boxes of birds in the back and just like driving from town to town?
Close. It was
That sounds
actually
great.
it was a very interesting childhood. I have a bunch of pictures of us like because we would stop at rest areas and like sometimes let the birds out, and we had all sorts of birds from like finches to all the way up to macaws and toucans. So I grew up handling birds. Like I was socialized with birds probably more than I was with other humans growing up. But it was actually a short bus that my dad had bought, like an old short bus that he painted white and put cages in it. So one side was the small birds like the finches and canaries, parakeets, and then the other side was the big birds, the parrots and toucans and stuff. And yeah, we just drove up and down California, and this was before the internet and stuff. So like we would just keep an eye out for pet stores and just stop by and be like, "Hey, where do you get your birds from? We've got birds."
Wait, so
I
many
know, it's so
questions.
weird. Yeah.
So many questions. Okay, so first, where would he restock on his birds? Like, where was his bird dealer? Northern California, Southern California, overseas? Where did he get birds to sell?
So enough time has passed that I think I can reveal the family secret.
Okay, oh,
Um
wow, this is great. We're only like 5 minutes in, and we're getting family secrets. Oh, this is great.
okay, so my dad realized early on that Americans really like the idea of like hand raised baby birds that grew up on a farm and everything is, you know, beautiful and everyone's happy. So we said we had a farm. And my dad had told us, you know, when I was a kid, tell people you have a farm, it doesn't really matter. What the reality was that we were getting our birds mostly from quarantine places. Like when birds came into the country, they would be put in quarantine for a while. It's just standard, like they
Yeah, yeah,
weren't
yeah.
illegal or anything. And then also some bird farms, all of which were in Southern California for some reason.
So were they like quarantine birds that like the owners never went back for because they were like 60 days and they're like, nah, keep it.
Oh, no, that's more like what happens at animal shelters, like animal care and control gets birds and stuff. But no,
Okay.
this is so there are some birds that are illegal to bring into America, and there are some birds that are legal, but once they come in, they have to be put in quarantine for a certain amount of time just to make sure they don't bring in any diseases.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of these quarantine places in Southern California area that are just full of birds that have been, I guess, like imported in, and they just hang out there for. I don't actually know. I was a kid. I don't know the time period. I don't know if it's weeks or months, but we
Yeah.
would just go and stock up. And then a lot of times with the more expensive birds, like the macaws, the parrots, the toucans, those would come from bird farms. where other people would raise them. But my dad always wanted us to give the illusion that, like, oh, we have our own farm, we raise everything on our own,
So great. Yeah.
and we would get baby birds sometimes that we would have to hand feed. So I learned how to do that at a very young age. If you ever need to feed a baby bird, I'm your gal.
Did you hand feed her? Did you do the thing where you chewed the food for it and then dropped it in its mouth? Which were you doing?
No, that would have been too tedious. There's formula. There's
Okay.
formula like with baby food. So you mix it with water, and then a lot of people use syringes, like without the needle, to feed the bird. My dad had basically created like baby bottles out of old, like like the ketchup bottles that you squeeze but
Yeah,
clear,
yeah.
so you can see what's happening.
Very resourceful, your father.
Oh yeah, he's super resourceful. Yeah, he had a very interesting upbringing in Greece, and then I think like coming to America, there's just all the possibilities. Like he grew up very impoverished in back in Greece.
Hmm. When did your
Yeah.
father come to America?
He came before my mom. Like he, my dad came, I think like somewhere like mid 70s to late 70s,
Okay.
and I was born in the 80s.
Uh-huh.
But my uncle came first. So my dad has like 7 siblings back in Greece, and in the Greek culture you spoil the first child. So the second child, my uncle Simo, he did not it kind of sucks to be the second kid, especially like if there's a boy that's older than you, because he's just going to get super spoiled. So he was a little frustrated that my grandparents kept having a bunch of kids, and like there would be a war, my grandpa would disappear, he'd come back, they'd have a few more kids, there was another war, my grandpa would go fight at war, he'd come back, so there were like a ton of kids. And at a certain point, my uncle Simo was like, if you guys have one more kid, I'm leaving. I can't, like, you're having way too many kids. And that's like 7 siblings that survived, because that was back when, like,
Yeah.
you would
Yeah.
have kids and just be like, oh, that one died. Like there were
That one was
3.
weak. Yeah. That one was born
Pretty
weak.
much.
Yeah.
They kept reusing the same name. That's what was weird. Like they had when I was talking to my grandma before she died, she was like, and then we had Paraskevula, but she died, and then we had another kid and we named her Paraskevula, but it took like 4 tries before they got a Paraskevula that didn't die. But they just kept reusing the same name.
Maybe it's the name. Like,
I don't know.
maybe
But
the name is cursed.
One finally took. But like so then after more kids were born, my uncle joined the merchant marines. Like the shipping and cargo is like what Greece has been doing since ancient times, because of the location, like right on the water, right in between Europe, Asia, and Africa. It's just shipping naturally is what happens. So he joined the ships, made it to America, and then ran away. I'm here because of illegal immigration.
Yes.
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 So he found someone, got married, stayed, ended up having like 4 kids before he was 19, and then he invited the rest of his family over. Most of my dad's siblings came, but my dad was the only one who stayed. And then everyone else went back to Greece.
And then that was probably also like in a time and an era where like your dad didn't like grow up thinking I'm going to be a bird salesman one day. It was probably like he got to America, they're like, look, there's a bird hustle if you want it, and he was like, all right, it's a job. Is that how it happened? Or
Well, so my dad always loved birds.
oh, he did always love birds. It was his calling.
It was his calling in a lot of ways. He always loved birds. And my dad had to work since he was a child. Like both of my parents only went to elementary school. Like they just didn't, you had to be rich to really be able to do more than that where they were growing up. So I think that a lot of Greeks like to have their own businesses and like to start their own businesses. And that's sort of one of the reasons a lot of Greeks came over to to America, because at the time my dad came, it was like right after he had served in the military during a dictatorship, a fascist dictatorship in Greece. So there was, a lot of poverty in a country that had already been war torn for such a long time. So then you come here, and of course, a lot of it is like, Greeks in America are considered white. So they were getting the loans, they were getting the opportunities to start businesses. And a lot of people started restaurants. That's what my dad first tried to do when he
Uh-huh.
came here. That's how you see a lot of Greek restaurants.
Okay.
And he just wasn't very good at it, and just issues with the family in general. Everyone was stealing money. My dad was getting disgruntled and like spitting into people's food. That restaurant did not last very long, which is
Was
a
this also
good
in the
thing.
Bay Area? Was this also in
This
the
was
Bay
in
Area
San
or San
Jose.
Jose? Okay.
Yeah, it was called the Busy Bee, and I think it only lasted a few years. It was
That's still a good run. A few
mismanaged.
years.
Tops. But I mean, a lot of Greek people who open restaurants, they'll have them like for
Generations.
generations even. Yeah, like at least in the first generation, because there's in the Greek culture, like there's a lot of drive to, if you have access to education, do your education, open your businesses, be your own boss. And there's this push to try and have each generation be like more accomplished than the one before it. So the first generation, maybe second generation, was into restaurants or other sort of like businesses. And then just a really big push to try and have, by the second or third generation, people becoming like doctors and lawyers and stuff like that.
That's great. That's great. When I think I have like one more bird question, and then we're gonna move on.
No, we could talk about birds.
I think we could talk about birds, but there's there's so many interesting things about you as well. Not just the birds. Did you what are you drinking there, buddy? I know we both have an affinity for coffee.
Yeah, so this is coffee mixed with green tea.
Okay.
Pretty good.
This is just plain old coffee with a little bit of creamer. It's the last of this morning's batch.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I get two good sized cups, and then one kind of halfway cup for the late afternoon pick me up, or right before I record a podcast pick me up. Did you have an affinity for the birds? What was your favorite birds? And did you ever like not want to sell one? Did you ever get attached to a bird and be like, no, don't sell Pablito?
Yes, I did get attached to birds, but my dad would almost always sell them. It's like it's kind of a cultural thing. Like my grandpa was even worse, because my grandpa, he most of my life he lived in Greece, but with my cousins who are older, who are in California, like he would eat their pets. Like they had rabbits.
Don't listen. No, my dog's back here. Don't listen.
Okay, no, they wouldn't eat dogs or cats. Like that's not really a thing in Greece. But rabbits are food. And like my cousins had pet rabbits in the yard in like a cage. And yeah, one day he visited, and without saying anything, he's just like, I'll make dinner. And he just killed all the rabbits and cooked them.
He was visiting and he killed their rabbits and made them dinner.
Yeah, because they're food. And there's this thing, I think part of it is like growing up, like having lived most of your life poor and hungry, and like having been through real, like both of my grandparents on my dad's side are genocide survivors.
Wow.
From the Greek genocide that happened in Turkey about 100 years ago. So it's just like, if they've been through so much hardship and so much like actual like starvation and stuff, that to them it's a bad thing to,
yeah, he's like,
to
you got
think
these
of
fat, he's like, you
food
got these
as
fat
pets.
rabbits.
Yeah, like it's wasteful. It's like
Selfish.
like even
like
my mom, when she was a kid in Greece, she was visiting her cousin out in a village, and they had chickens, and my mom was probably like 8 at the time, and she would feed the chickens, and she really liked playing with them. And then her aunt came out and was like, "Oh, you like the chickens, huh?" And my mom was like, "Yeah, they're really cute. They play with me." And she was like, "Which one's your favorite?" And my mom said, "That one. It eats out of my hand." She grabbed it, broke its neck right in front of my mom and said, "Chickens are food." So it's just, they think of it as like a faulty way of thinking about food. Like, it's like people who empathize with objects, right? And then it's like, no, that's a thing. It doesn't have feelings. That's how a lot of people think about like food animals,
Like
chickens, rabbits.
not dogs or cats, but rabbits and birds and yeah.
Yeah, and not all birds. Like when I was a kid, my dad would have us catch sparrows and we would eat sparrows. And that was just something I did as a child. And then as I got older, I was like, oh, that's a little weird that we do that. I don't know anyone else who does that. And then at some point, my mom was like, we should probably stop doing this. I think it's weird to people that we do this.
Is there like a big like Greek community in San Jose, or did you guys just randomly landed in San Jose?
So San Jose has a really big community of people from the island of Chios, which is where my dad's side of the family's from. It's an island on the Aegean right by Turkey. And one of the two islands, I don't know if you've been hearing all the refugees coming in, mostly from Syria.
Mm-hmm.
They're going mainly to two islands in the Aegean, Lesbos, which everyone remembers for obvious reasons because of the name.
Did you say I didn't laugh? I was able to, you were able to say it and I didn't laugh.
And it actually means what you think it means. There was in ancient Greece, the poet Sappho, who was a very famous lesbian poet, was from that island, which is why it's called that. Anyways, and then Chios, the island my dad's side of the family's from, where I lived as a kid, is right by there. So it's over the past 10 years, both of those islands have just changed quite a bit with everything going on. Oh, dropped my phone. Sorry.
That's okay. Wow, that's so interesting. We've been talking for almost 25 minutes and we haven't even mentioned what we both love to do as a hobby is try and make people laugh. And but there's not a lot of that going on right now. We're all kind of like sheltered in place. You are sheltered in a little bit more place because you have immune deficiencies, or am I saying that right? You have a compromised immune system?
I do have a compromised immune system. I have this rare idiopathic blood condition where basically a lot of my white blood cells are missing, my neutrophil white blood cells, and they're the ones that fight bacteria. Thankfully, my white blood cells that are virus fighting are all intact. But yeah, I've been, I think, a little bit stricter with sheltering in place than a lot of people I know. I still like I'll go out and go for walks or like social distantly hang out with people, but like stand-up shows are starting back up again in the city, which I love that that's happening. But for me, I'm thinking like, okay, what precautions would I need to take to make that safe? Like mask, visor, probably my own mic, which I realize they're not that expensive. So
I'm taking my own mic to open mics right now.
Yeah. So that's something I might branch out to, but I'm having surgery again next month. So it wouldn't be till after I heal from that. So I'm still looking at like a few months out before I can do that. Because I have to like shelter in place even more leading up to a surgery. Just because I don't, I mean, I don't want to get the virus in general, but if I get it now, then my surgery will be pushed, and it's just a lot more to consider.
And what type of surgery is this? A surgery to do with your condition, or just an old football injury?
No, it's so I have had some surgeries with my condition. This one appears to be unrelated. So the thing about my condition is that no one knows why I have it. A couple years ago, I started getting sick all the time. And then eventually I got an infection that was really bad that needed surgery. And that's when they did blood work and realized that I had this blood condition, but they don't know why. Like, they don't know why it started happening. So I've had to have like several surgeries related to that. This, I think, as far as I can tell, is unrelated. I always hope that after some surgery, then I'll recover and then my blood cells will be normal, because when something's idiopathic, it's just like I have to stop myself from constantly being like, could it be this? Could it be that? Like, what does Google say? And like
Right, right.
that's like going down the rabbit hole situation. But this surgery um is I'll talk about it because it is kind of like related to girl stuff, but I think we should normalize talking about the uterus. So do you regret asking the question?
No, as a matter of fact, the girl I had on the podcast last week talked about a hysterectomy. And even when I was like thinking, do I want to ask her about her surgery, or like, because I was just like, in general, like, you never know, like what the
Yeah.
person's, and then I was like, I was gonna say, is it to do with your condition or is it girl stuff? I really was gonna say that,
It's
because it's
girl
very
stuff.
common, and you're right. We do need to normalize just a lot of things. So normalize
Yeah.
away.
So I have a fibroid. Have you heard of those?
No, explain.
Okay. So fibroids are these like benign tumors basically that grow in or attached to the uterus. So they're pretty common. A lot of women get like small ones in their uterus. And if they start getting big, that's when it starts to be a problem. Um, I have one on the outside of my uterus that I first found out I had a couple of years ago, but I had Kaiser at the time. And like, I don't want to just like talk shit about Kaiser, but it's really hard to not
Uh-huh.
because like there've just been so many instances. Like, I had been getting sick for a year and they never did, like it took them a year and a serious E. coli infection before they did the blood work that revealed my condition, because I used to weigh like 70 pounds more than I do now. And
Mm-hmm.
every time I went to the doctor and I was like, I don't feel well, this and that is happening, they would always just say, well, you should lose weight, and they wouldn't look into it any further than that. And it almost killed me. So then, in 2018 is when I finally realized I had this condition. And then there were a lot of like tests to try and diagnose it and like figure out what was happening. And they found out that I had a fibroid attached to the backside of my uterus, which they told me wasn't very big. They were like, "Oh, it's maybe like round like an orange, but flat. It's not really a problem. If you remove it, we would probably have to do like a full hysterectomy. You probably don't want to do that," because I was only like 34 at the time. And so they kind of like minimized it and terrified me from getting surgery done. Now it's been a couple years later and I started feeling more pain, discomfort when walking. I always look like 7 months pregnant. And I got another MRI done, and this fibroid apparently was big because I still have the MRI from Kaiser. It was big then, and or no, it was an ultrasound at Kaiser, but they just kind of had minimized it. And now it's grown quite a bit. It's the size of a cantaloupe.
That's
Um,
pretty big.
it's pretty big. It's like 2 or 3 times bigger than my actual uterus, which is what it's attached to. And it's on the outside, which means it's just kind of this cantaloupe moving around in my body and tugging on my uterus, which is why I've been feeling like so much pain almost constantly. And then it's pushing on my back and it's causing all these other issues. And I look like 6 months pregnant all the time. So the surgery is to remove that. um,
Wow.
and it's a little frustrating because like had I switched insurance from Kaiser end of last year after too many, like one thing after another, like just feeling like dismissed all the time. Um and I'm a little frustrated because like I could have had this surgery 2 years ago when it wasn't as risky with the virus, with everything going on. But I
Hmm.
try to not complain too much because like I'm grateful that I can have this surgery. I have like healthy SF. They have a really good health plan because all of this like becoming chronically ill, it sort of like turned my life upside down. Like I lost my job because of it, and like I feel very grateful that I live in a city that has the socialized healthcare, which is sort of like, it's Medi-Cal and then some. So
Hmm.
I don't want to complain too much. I'm glad I'm getting it fixed now, but I am very annoyed with Kaiser.
With everything that's going on in our world today, I would like to say that you are not a complainer, right? Because I remember when the pandemic started and the lockdown started, you posted I wouldn't say a lot of content, a lot of videos, but you posted some stuff that really made me like kind of like look at like what I had and made me enjoy it. Like I remember like you posting about like just how you'd like to do your coffee, right?
Oh
I remember,
yeah.
and when we emailed each other back and forth a couple of times. I forgot what you said about the I was something.
As I love the smell of privilege in the morning.
Yes, I remember when you said that, and you absolutely made me remember that. Like, I have a French press, I have a grinder, I have beans, I have cinnamon sticks, and I can make myself a really great cup of coffee in my kitchen and not have to leave. And like that post of yours reminded me of that. Like, so when so many people were just like posting these negative things and these horrendous and these angry things, like you said that, and it really like made me like go like she's absolutely right. Like we can create our own little privilege or whatever. And I and I started like doing my French press again, and like I really got into it. I'm still doing my French press now. And then you also on your birthday, you made yourself a cake, and you're just like, I'm gonna have fucking birthday cake, and if you want to have cake with me, you can watch. And you absolutely made yourself a birthday cake, you made yourself a birthday dinner, and you invited people to watch.
Yeah.
So
I did. I
I
sang happy birthday to myself.
I think I was great, and I really enjoyed them. And you're still very positive, very upbeat. And man, I had no idea. I just assumed that the surgery you're gonna have was to do with your condition and not just other regular life problems that happen to people. So good luck with
Yeah.
that. Um,
Thank you. I mean, my hope is that if this is removed, because of course I've looked at every corner of the internet, and there have been times when fibroids get really big that they can cause other issues and your body might react like it's fighting an infection. So it's a stretch, but a part of me does hope, well, hey, maybe if this comes out, my blood situation will figure itself out. But yeah, most likely it's unrelated.
so you started getting sick a couple of years ago. Were you already doing comedy at that time, or is comedy something that you started kind of like as self therapy to that?
So, I had started doing comedy about 10 years ago.
Okay.
Um, and I did it for a few years, and then when I was in grad school, I had a back issue. Like I had a herniated disc, and it got really bad, and like I ended up having to be in the hospital for a week, and like had to relearn how to walk. And it was like it took months to recover from it, and then ended up, they had put me on opiates. So then
Oh
once my
no.
back got better, then I had to quit the opiates. And anyways, all of that was like a lot to handle while also doing grad school. So that's sort of when I had stopped doing stand up, because I wanted to focus on grad school and like healing. Um, then for about 5 years, I did stand up maybe once or twice a year, just so that I didn't completely put it behind me. I didn't want to let it go. Like I love it.
Right.
And then once I got sick and I had to have surgeries and like go on leave from work, it was something that I did as a way to like process and cope with what I was going through. So a lot of my stand up like is about my health issues, or even like mental health issues, or of like my um my cultural upbringing, because I feel like I feel like a lot of my stand up is autobiographical, and I try to figure out how to like find a way to sort of make my story humorous and palatable, because a lot of who I am as a person is not what people assume I am when they look at me. So it's just like, okay, I have to figure out how to talk about all this stuff while also being aware of like, what people might be thinking about me.
Yeah. The first time I saw you do comedy was at the Sacramento Punchline, and you were on the Invisible Disabilities show with Ali and Drew and Amber.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
those were some great shows, and they really I like I've met so many great comics through those shows. Like that's where I first saw you. That's where I first saw Coral Best. That's where I first saw Ivy Cordova. Who are you guys are all comics that have been around, but that was the avenue that led me to see you guys for the first time, and like I'm really grateful for that show, and I can't wait
Yeah, me
for that
too.
to come back. Right?
Hopefully. Yeah,
Yeah.
hopefully soon. I don't know what's going on with the Sac Punchline. I know the one in SF is not opening anytime soon.
Yeah, well, I haven't heard anything about the one here in Sacramento. Like you said, a couple of bars are opening back up, and they're starting to do. Sacramento Comedy Spot is doing. They're closing down the street in front of them because there's like restaurants and stuff, and so they're able to put shows on from their deck facing the street, and it looks really cool. They're able to sell tables. They're able to sell tables. People are buying tables, and then they're having like the restaurant next door like bring in food to them. So it's really cool. So there's a lot of that going on, and I think we're people are just figuring it out and just trying to be safe at the same time. You know.
Yeah. And it's tricky because it's like we don't know for sure what what works and what doesn't, like but I think I am, as much as like I have to take precautions for myself, I'm glad to see that comedy is happening again, because I think that people need to laugh right now. And I think it's an art form that really just helps with healing, I think, not just for the performer but for the
No,
audience.
people definitely need to laugh right now. Like the feedback that I've gotten from my friends who have done shows has just been like the audience was so thirsty for comedy. Like was just so glad to one to be out, two like having a nice dinner somewhere, and three like you're getting to watch somebody make you laugh. So like that combination of the three, I think comedy is going to just be huge when this is over again, and I'm looking forward to that. I looked you up on YouTube right before this, and I already knew about the Invisible Disability show, so I knew we were going to talk about that. But I had no idea about the roast battles that you participated in, and I watched. I probably watched about 6 or 7 minutes of one. What was that? About 2 years ago? The
Uh,
Ultimate Roast Championships.
it's kind of been within the past year,
Oh,
or
it was
yeah,
more
like
recent.
yeah, I think I started those in like the beginning of 2019, maybe.
Uh
Yeah,
huh.
like it's a little over a year ago is when I started.
Okay, and how
Yeah.
is it like a tournament? Did you move on? Did you have fun, or had you done roast before?
I had not done roast before. It was a tournament and I made it all the way to, like, I didn't win the belt, but I was the number one ranked contender. So like I only lost to the person who ended up getting the first guy to get the belt. But I had beat like a bunch of people and like I think like Cree Powell has the belt now, and like I've already beat her a couple times. I had never done it before, but I guess like I'm good at like insulting people. I don't know. It's I think part of it is also cultural. Like in the Greek culture, you're like you it's not considered like offensive, to be honest. I feel like that's a very American thing, and maybe like a white American thing more specifically, that you can't ever comment on what a person looks like, or tease them or make fun of them, because it's considered mean and it's considered offensive. But like growing up in my home, or even when I'm in Greece, it's like, yeah, you make fun of people for their nose, you make fun of people for their size, like you just do it, you joke about it, everyone jokes about it, and it's sort of like, and it's not considered like a mean thing. So I don't know, I don't want to make everything cultural, but I do just feel like it's not a stretch for me to talk about these things. And what I like about a roast battle is that it's like socially acceptable to do that. Because if I do it in real life, jokingly, except maybe with some of my closer friends, but if I ever try to do it in real life, a lot of times it's just like, oh, she's a bitch. Like, what the hell's wrong with her? Like, it's so mean. It's like, okay, whatever.
Yeah, and at a roast battle, I mean, the audience is waiting for it, and it's kind of got like a WWF type atmosphere of like,
Yes.
and I think that did was it a different energy?
Then stand up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for one, it's like there's the back and forth, so you're not up there alone. And there's like jokes that I write in advance, and then there's also like riffing and comebacks, so I like that. And I have like a little bit of an improv background as well. So I feel like
Oh,
that helps with both the teamwork, and then also like coming up with riffs and like rebuttals and stuff. And I also love puns. So a lot of times my roast jokes are actually like some form of a pun.
yeah. You were battling Bryce, and you made several references to Bryce cakes, Bryce white on Bryce, and
Yeah.
and he even said at one point, "What is this, a pun battle?" Like,
It's whatever you make it.
yeah, that's so funny. What how much improv did you do, or where did you do improv?
So I did it's kind of like an open mic for improv, but every Tuesday at Piano Fight in the city there was open improv. So that's probably like that was the thing I did most regularly. And then kind of through that I started doing this show called Comedy Baseball, which is an improv competition, sort of in the theme of baseball, where basically like one side pitches you a premise, and then you have to come up with a joke based on that premise and a certain guideline. So it's um, like a improv style thing. Like there's the one, sorry, I'm having trouble figuring out what word to use. Improv games, right? So
Okay.
like there's the game like 92 blanks walk into a bar, right? And then you sort of complete it with whatever premise they pitched you, or like world's worst, like stuff like that. So
Hmm.
that's probably the most improv that I've done. And it's also heavy on the puns. when you when you have to come up with a joke on the spot, a lot of times it's just a pun.
Yeah. Have you ever done any of the pun shows? Like, I know Sacramento has.
Capital Punishment.
Thank you, because I just
Yeah.
blanked on it.
Yeah, I did that once before the pandemic, and then I did the online version as well.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
did they have a huge following? That show is so popular. Did you do it at Luna's Cafe?
I did.
Sold
Yeah.
out, right? Like packed.
Yeah, it was packed. I didn't know so many people could fit in there. It
Probably
was so
shouldn't have
much
been,
fun.
but
Yeah, I'm
I
glad I did it in February. So
Oh,
kind of
you
right
barely
before the world
squeezed it
shut
in.
down. Yep.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
I yeah. Who's that? That's Damien Harmony. Um,
Oh, names. I'm bad at names.
yeah, I'm forgetting everyone's name right now, but yeah, that's a great crew. The
Yeah.
Mark Berg, right?
Yeah.
Mark Berg.
Super nerdy guys. I love it.
Yeah, and they are super smart. I hung out recently with Mark and I am killing myself for forgetting Daniel Hamburger.
That's it. Yeah.
Why was I forgetting Daniel's name? I'm gonna edit that out.
Yeah. No, that's fine.
I hung out recently with Mark and Daniel, and they are super smart, super
Hmm.
nerdy, and like they say stuff, and I'm like, was that a joke or was that just like over my head
Oh,
all the time?
half their puns go over my head. And I mean, like, Damien is a Latin teacher. So it's just like they literally sometimes make references that I'm just like, I don't, I have no idea what you're, I'm sure it's, it's a solid pun, but
Yeah, Damien's stand up is super punny and super like long and complicated, and it just goes and goes and goes, and like right before the pandemic, he had this joke that ended with Britney Spears, and just the way he set it up, and oh my god, yeah, that guy is amazing, and I am not quick witted enough to be punny, so I would never do a roast battle. I guess I should never say never, right? The whole thing of like, no, I never say never, but like, I have no desire to do a roast battle or no desire to do puns because I just can't think that quick. And I think you're either gifted with it or you're not, but that's where I am on puns,
I
man.
mean, my first roast battle, the very first time I did it, I was terrible. I sucked so much, and like I just didn't. It took a while to sort of like adjust to it because it is very different from doing stand up. But yeah, you have to like it. You have to. I know people who just don't want to be mean and would never do one because they don't want to
Yeah.
ever. They don't. They just don't want to say anything mean about someone else. So
Uh-huh.
I don't have that problem.
I'm worried that I'll just get too mean and I can't come back from it.
But that's sort of what you do in a roast battle, though. Like it's hard to be too mean. Like I feel like sometimes people might feel like something is off limits, but I just think as long as you can figure out how to make it funny, nothing is off limits. But it
Right.
does have to be funny. That's always the risk. Like if you just
Yeah. Have you ever seen a roast battle just go south? We're just like, okay, that guy's just being mean now, or like that girl's just being mean now. I've seen a couple where it's like, oh, that was kind of mean, but I don't
Yeah,
know.
I think that it's just like, well, if it's just an insult or an observation, it's not funny, like, but it does, I feel like for me, it's better when someone else does that. If someone's just like, oh, you're ugly, it's like, well, where's the joke? Like you can
Yeah,
give them shit for sucking at telling a joke.
that's
But
that.
yeah, it does seem like it could easily just turn into just one insult after another without actual jokes.
Have you been writing comedy during the pandemic? Have you been what's kept you? How have you kept your comedy juices flowing? How have you kept that? Have you been able to do anything like that?
Yeah, so I've done some Zoom shows and I have written new material, especially around sort of like identity and the immigrant experience, and um sort of like the difference between like ethnic identity and racial identity, because Greeks are an ethnic group, but then in America we're white, so we're racially white, but ethnically and culturally we're not. And
Yeah,
that's very difficult for a lot of Americans to understand. So I've been trying to develop material around that. And I think I've had a lot of people tell me that I shouldn't talk about race and I shouldn't joke about race. And there's a lot of like just weirdness around it, and I feel like a lot of like confusion in general with a lot of Americans, especially like white Americans right now. But I just feel like, well, all the more reason to talk about it. And it's sort of been helping me process kind of what's going on bigger picture with our country right now, but then also where sort of like where I fit into everything and where my cultural group fits into everything. Because Greek Americans a lot of times only hang out with each other, because if we start talking about ourselves and our history, it a lot of times, especially, and I don't want to say it's exclusive to white Americans, but like especially with white Americans, they it's hard for them to understand the ways that we are like culturally and historically different. So we end up having this weird, like marginalized experience where we keep to ourselves, and we don't really branch out. And I'm trying to figure out, like, okay, how do I stay me and talk about who I am, but in a way that Americans like don't think is offensive. So that's sort of my ambitious goal with my
That's
stand up at
great.
this point.
Yeah, because the whole what you're saying, like with the immigrant experience, because I think that so many times when we hear the term immigrant, we expect to see not somebody who's white. You're like, oh, that
Yeah.
they're not an immigrant. Like you expect to see like somebody my color or somebody darker or somebody, you know what I'm saying? So I think that's a really interesting perspective, and it's something I hadn't thought about until you just mentioned it right now. And even when you were telling the stories at the very beginning of the podcast, how you were saying that like, there was this American life and then there was this Greek life that you lived. Like it really reminded me a lot of conversations that I had with last week's guest, Jessica De La Garza, when I was talking about like what it was like when I was a kid and visiting Mexico, and how it was like it was a a less fast paced life, and it was something that like looking at it now, like oh my gosh, that's such a great life to lead, right? As opposed to this like fast paced life that we live here in America. But
Hmm.
they're both beautiful in their own way, but like we just got to look at it from the right perspectives, I guess.
Yeah.
When was the last time you were able to visit?
It's been a long time. It's been over 10 years.
Oh
So,
wow.
yeah, growing up, I mean, as a little kid, I told you it was like half there, half here. And then up until I was about high school, it was every summer we'd go for like 1 or 2 months. And then once I sort of became an adult and went out on my own, it just became a lot harder. And because, like when I was in college, I took like double units and I was working a bunch of jobs, and like it was just I had a very different college experience from like a lot of my classmates. And then trying to get work after having multiple jobs, like having a hard time even finding a job that had vacation time, that even had like health benefits, right?
Yeah.
And then by the time I got to the point where I had a full-time job, it was like, wait, I only get like a week vacation a year. Like it's gonna be like a day to fly to Greece, 2 days to get over jet lag, 1 day to see all my hundreds of family members who are gonna be very offended if I go to Greece and don't see them.
Yes.
And then I fly back to go back to work exhausted. It became like really difficult to do. So the last time I went was over 10 years ago, before the economic crisis. I don't even know if you remember that with everything else that's happened in the world, but before Brexit, there was talks of Grexit, which was,
Really.
yeah, because the Greece's economy has been really, really suffering over the past like 15 years or so. But Greece never, like, it didn't end up exiting the EU. There's all sorts of like shady political things going on with like how the EU treats Greece, and the country has become privatized. Like China owns most of Greece's shipping now, which is like uh, and it's a whole political thing, and it's a whole like there's a lot of issues with the economy. So yeah, the last time I went was even before the refugees started coming in
Mhm.
from mostly Syria. um so it's changed a lot from what I hear and from what I can imagine. And I do want to go back, but it's even trickier now.
Yeah. Well, Maria, I hope you get to go back, and I hope that you get a lot of time to visit and you're not like, right. I know exactly what you're talking about because when we visit our family in Mexico, it's like, okay, we're going to spend this day with them. We're going to spend this day with them, this day with them.
Yeah.
And what about them? Well, they're going to have to show up at this place because we can't go. Like, and
Right.
it's just so hard because like you obviously love all your family and you want to see everybody, but yeah, it's a lot.
It's
Um,
a lot. It's a lot. And if I'm like, hey, I'm here, everyone come to this restaurant, let's all hang out, then I have to pay for everything for like
oh,
100
heck
people.
no.
Because that's like the Greek culture. If you invite people out, you have to pay. If it's your birthday and you invite people for a dinner, you're paying for everything.
Oh,
Like
wow.
it's kind of reversed from how it is in America.
Oh man. When's your surgery?
It is on the 19th of next month.
Okay,
So
on the
it's
19th
it's
of next month.
coming up.
All right. I hope that everything goes well for you, and I'll definitely keep in touch with you and check in with you right
Thank you.
before or right after because, like I said, like um, it I I am very much a proponent of like it takes a village and we all have to like do our part to make sure that everyone keeps going. And some of your posts really got me through some really tough days at the beginning of this
Aw,
pandemic. So thanks a lot for that. And
thank you.
thanks for coming on the podcast. And I had no idea we were going to talk so much about birds today.
Well, thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun talking about birds and talking about Greece. I thoroughly enjoyed this last hour I just spent with you. And
Yeah, me
anything
too.
you want to plug before there's nothing's going on, right? Like,
I mean, I am in this piano fight thing next week, like virtual. So piano fight's this like really cool venue in San
it's
Francisco.
awesome.
It's awesome. And now they've created this like online venue. And next Thursday they're doing basically like a party. Like you buy your ticket and it's all virtual and you can like interact with people. I don't know exactly how it works like with avatars or whatever. Um and there's going to be different shows and one of the shows is going to be comedy baseball that I was telling you about.
Right?
So when I did comedy baseball, my team did pretty well. Like we ended up like I think second or third place. My team was called the Sons of Pitches. So I'm gonna
Love it.
be in that next week. I'm still trying to figure out the details, but that's a fun virtual thing, and you can like experience piano fight in virtual form and like get to see everybody again.
I went to Piano Fight a couple years ago to watch this podcaster I follow. Uh, he made a movie independently, and he had a screening at Piano Fight
Yeah.
in one of the theaters. I was like, this place is cool. It's got big room in the front, and then theater like movie. You could show movies in like some of the back rooms.
Yeah.
That was weird. It made me like really think like this place like as far as like San Francisco history goes. I bet you this is super old and there's been tons of stuff that happened in this place.
I think it's a relatively new place, like
Oh,
less than
okay.
10 years, if I were to guess. But it's already become such a staple in the art scene. And like it's my favorite venue in the whole city. So like I spent a lot of time there back
All
when
right.
in the before times.
Well, we're gonna get back to those times, and when I come to the city, take me there, and when you come here,
Yeah,
let's go have some Greek food and
sounds
some good
good.
coffee. And thanks for coming on the podcast today. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Me too. Thanks for having me.
Okay, thanks.
Bye.
Bye.